In our first example, we took a photo of my son and put him on a new background. Well, this fellow actually probably is a better candidate for going on the Hawaiian background. So let's try to see how we can put him, extract him out of here. So I'm going to take a quick moment to look at this and go, okay, it's got some definite hard edges that are a candidate for either the quick selection tool or the magnetic lasso tool, and then some potentially challenging stuff in here, and also the flame. So I'm going to again approach this in a couple of pieces. At this point, looking at it right away, select color range as an example, something that's not going to really help me because there's too many range of colors. I might use it a little bit later, but for right now I'm going to focus on the parts that are easy to select. So easy is of course a relative term. So let's first of all just take the quick selection tool and see what kind of result we get, just trying to get not that part. And again, remember, I'm kind of viewing this like try and get me close, and I'll get it better as I go. So let's get rid of this middle part here. That's pretty good. At this point, I might switch to the magnetic lasso tool, hold down the shift key, and make sure I get these extra pieces selected. Go to my regular lasso. I'm just holding the shift and pressing the letter L for lasso to try and get rid of the parts that I don't want in here. Remember that same idea of looping around. Well, let's zoom in a little bit so it's a little easier to see what we're doing. Shift key to add in parts that we didn't get, and then Option or Alt to take away the parts that we have selected that we don't want. And what I would periodically be doing is pressing Q for quick mask to take a closer look and see what we've got. So we want this part selected, and we also want this area selected. So once again, holding down the shift key, there's a little tiny piece there that I want to include, and don't want that area selected. I went a little too far. Something like that. That's looking pretty good there. Oops. I want to take this away from the selection, and honestly that's what happens sometimes. You have to sort of do it and go, oh wait a minute, that's not what I had in mind, because you need, especially when you're zoomed in, you forget, am I adding or taking away? But that's okay, because as long as you hold down one of the two keys, you can keep fine-tuning it. That all looks pretty good up there. I'm going to ignore that busy information till later. But I do want to try and add this part. Again, I'm going to save that part for later. So that's looking pretty good, I think. Let's hit Q for quick mask. Yeah, I missed a little bit over here. That looks a little better. Still not quite the way that I want here. That's a little better. So let's put that on a layer by itself. Command or Control J. See what we've got. Looks pretty good. But I'm still missing a few pieces here and there. So we're going to hide that and come back. And this is where I might try using color range. I'm going to go in. Remember, we can identify an area that we want to work on. So I've selected roughly around the flame. Then I'm going to go to color range and see if I can't hold down the shift key and add in some of these. That was not a good choice there. Bits and pieces. Probably move the fuzziness down because I'm trying to get just most of the flame here. And now at this point I would probably hold down the shift key and just try and get a little more of this and take away the parts that I don't want. And once again put that on a layer by itself. And it's supposed to be semi-see-through, flamey-like, so I'm okay with that. Now, for this, the most challenging part will be this area in here. So what I'd probably consider doing is making a rough selection to say, really, that's what I want to focus on. So let's take that, put it on a layer by itself, and hide everything else. Now, whatever we do next will give us an opportunity to just focus on those areas. So let's just see, out of interest, if I go to color range, put this to none for a second, and start to pick up some of the colors I want in here of the green. See, very quickly I'm getting some of the background. So what I may want to do is to try and separate that in some way. So for example, this is where we could temporarily add adjustment layers. In one of the bonus movies I showed you how you can change the color of something. Well, this might be a case where changing the color to get it further away from the background might be an interesting option. So let's go to some color, then click on the green, and we're going to push the lightness slider to try and make it black. Maybe saturate a bit more to make it a more saturated black. The hue slider is not going to really do much for us in this particular case. I might also try and add a vibrancy slider to see if that's going to do anything. It doesn't really, well, it helps a little bit I think, but not a huge amount. So let's go back to our layers palette. Now I could go and try a couple things. For example, click on the layer thumbnail. Now go to our channels palette and see if there's a channel. That red actually looks pretty good, so let's try duplicating that. Use levels and see if we can't push this up a little further. Something like that. It's not bad. I mean, the biggest challenge is there's still that line in there all the time, no matter what I do. So that's just something we have to try to live with. This point, I might again try select color range on this and see what we're getting. That's actually not too bad. I don't worry, I'm really looking at the edges of these leaves. I'm not looking at the interior portions. So now that I have a selection, I go back to RGB, back to my layers, and then hide these two, because now it might be a little easier for me to zoom in and really just take away the parts I don't want. I don't want this area here, or this area here, or this one here. But I do want all these kind of interior areas of all the leaves. Now I'm doing this with the lasso tool with the shift key held down to add parts in, or option to take them away. Of course I could also look at it from a quick match standpoint and see what parts still need to be added in. So we'll just add a few little pieces here. Not really worried about this part down here because on my original selection on this layer I went far enough to get that. I do need to do a few little things down here though to get rid of these parts of my selection that I don't need. Something like that. I'm still going through this relatively quickly, but this is also relatively real world in terms of the things I would try to see if it's going to work or not. So I'm pretty happy with the way that looks, I think, so let's try it. Duplicate it. Take that one away. That's not bad. Push it up on top and then combine it with that. Now, one thing that you can try, anytime you take a piece of a layer like that and jump it onto a layer by itself, is to try duplicating it. And you see when you do that, it often adds a little bit more. In this case, I don't think I like what it's added, so I might not do that. So now I've got the three layers that I want to bring over to my other background. Now what I probably do in this case, there's a number of possibilities, but one of the things I might try is to take these three layers, right or control click and choose convert to smart object. Then when I take my move tool, drag it, hold on top of the background, you'll see that it's done a pretty good job. I like the way that's looking. Now it happens to blend in pretty well, and this is a good case in point where we could have spent hours trying to get a perfect selection and realize that we're putting it against something where a lot of the background is green anyway and you won't even really see the difference. But I'll try and put it somewhere where you can see it's doing pretty good. I'm not terribly thrilled about the way the leaf works, but I could try to fix that up a little bit. This is a smart object. That means if I want to tweak anything, I double click on this and it will open up the individual layers. So if I decided that there was a part that I needed, for example, to take my lasso tool and just fix up this bit here, whatever it might be. Then I close it and save it, pops it back. Because it's a smart object, it also means it has the ability to do smart filters, so I could do Gaussian blur. Now it's going to blur everything at first. I'm really just paying attention to the flame because I want it to be a little more blurry. So let's actually move over here to that part. Click OK. Now initially it's going to make everything blurry. I'm going to take the mask that goes with smart filter, invert it so it's black, then take my paintbrush. I make sure it's just back to normal mode. I want white as my foreground color, and I'll probably also use a softer brush, maybe a little bigger, and wherever I want it to be blurry, I'm taking the mask and painting white to reveal that part, so that part becomes blurry. It's pretty subtle. Let's zoom in a bit maybe so you can see it. See, there's a pretty artificial edge, doesn't look that great, and now with that blur, it just helps kind of blend it in a little bit. That's another example of the kind of approach I would take, is consider several tools, but also always be thinking of the end result. I want to end up with a selection which is really good, so when I position whatever it is I'm doing in some other photo, it looks realistic, and I can always tweak it further.